Homicide energy drink is what Panera should call their lemonade that kills people. I hope no one else is doing a bit, but I'm doing a bit.
Daddy's got a pod.
I'm Casey Kasem, and this one's for the perverts.
Join us in our strange ritual.
That is time traveling love smut.
I can only say horny in one season opener.
A medium amount of fun and an extra large amount of sweaty.
From the minds that brought you Giraffe and Amerisaur.
No regrets, no masters.
I got dick jokes to make, man. Leave me alone.
This is good. This is good for anyone.
This one's going to be weird. I'm very interested to see where this goes.
Hello and welcome to Debate This, the show where no one is right but someone is definitely wrong. In this show, we take time out of our busy adult lives to talk about comic books, video games, and workplace comedies that hold up a horribly accurate mirror up to our own IRL jobs and lives. Ugh.
Do we have to talk about that, though?
We do.
Feels bad.
Yeah, and
I don't
today's...
wanna.
Look, we're going to talk about a comedy show today, but it's going to feel bad. And it's not going to feel bad because the material's bad. It's going to feel bad because
you and I work in tech.
Because you and I work in tech, and as we all know, the real enemy that we made along the way is capitalism.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I'm cheating a little bit. This feels a lot like when Office Space came out, and everyone in that field was like, yeah, that's not a comedy. That's my life. That's what it is.
Spoiler, there's reason for that.
Oh, I know, man. I know.
You know that.
We've all had our supervisor lean on our cubicle and say, yeah, I'm going to need you to come in on Saturday.
I work an entirely online job and have had my manager lean on my cubicle recently, so I get it, man.
The I'm going to need that TPS report is the version of millennials being asked to turn things into a PDF, which is a real thing I've had done by a former supervisor.
It is. We're going to talk about Office Space and how it did for 90s and 2000s is what we're talking about today. It did for the current era. But let me quickly just note. So this is going to start out as a bummer, but just kind of stay with me here. So the 2020s and most notably the pandemic obviously changed a lot about society as it is today. But I do think after the dust settles a little bit more, history books are going to show that some of the most indirect effects are related to how the pandemic dethroned the tech industry in a specific way. You know, and like we all remember, this was not very long ago, but, you know, following the rise of Silicon Valley empires like Google, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, you know, in the late 2000s, as we were getting out of college and social media is coming, yada, 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 tech companies, specifically those operating in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is, you know, constitutes San Francisco, San Jose, Oakland, these tech companies became synonymous with all of the silly things that we think about today. Office kegerators, arcade machines, nap pods, you know, all the having like dry cleaning and shit and a live chef team, you know, on site at all times. And all these wacky things that were all really designed just to attract talent. And it seemed like these companies for a long time were operating on quite literally monopoly money, that there was no, you know, idea. They were just throwing money at whatever. And that there was no rate at which these venture capital firms would quit throwing monies at companies like Uber, who famously was never once profitable, never had a profitable quarter until Q2 of 2023.
That's way more common than people probably realize. Like, again, your point stands that it's wild to think about, but I mean, Netflix is the same way. I mean,
Netflix is the same way.
There are
Twitter.
there are so many companies that go years before they actually like make profit. I
mean, Facebook really kind of changed the idea of like users over revenue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is a direct result of that culture.
The other change and it feels like it was the pandemic because it happened mid-pandemic, was the federal interest rate went up in 2021, yes. And that slammed the door on the monopoly money printing scheme all these companies had of like could get loans that paid like the federal interest rate was lower than the money they could make by taking out endless loans forever and ever.
Yeah, well said.
And the money well dried up.
And you might be wondering, why are we talking about bummers and why are we talking about the current state of the economy? Well, I talk about it because, and Kyle already mentioned it, but in Office Space, Mike Judge, director and creator Mike Judge, perfectly encapsulates the prison of mundanity of the late 90s era Office, from its middle managers to its endless paperwork and TPS reports to Jeans on Friday. That the fluorescent blighted hellscape is burned in the memories of anyone who has tangentially been in a similar environment, right? So 15 years later, gosh dang it, he does it again, but this time with the utopian adult playgrounds of the tech giants, the fancy coffee machines, the bike paths, and the unchecked hubris of rich white men who've never once been told no in a day in their lives.
This podcast is meant to be funny.
It's not funny.
We're meant to have a good time.
Yeah.
So are both of the Mike Judge creations we're talking about, Todd.
Really, anything Mike Judge has created that isn't King of the Hill. So today's episode, if you haven't already guessed, today's episode is about HBO's Silicon Valley and
Max's Silicon Valley.
HBO Go's Silicon Valley. And this episode was commissioned by #ButtThwompNation member and patron Deb. So thank you, Deb. If you'd like to commission your own episode of Flavor Text, please visit our Patreon site at patreon.com/debatethiscast. To help me kick off this round of Series A funding, I'm going to need to bring in my crack team of engineers. Kyle, making the world a better place through Paxos algorithms for consensus protocols, Harper. Matt, making the world a better place through scalable, fault-tolerant distributed databases with asset transactions, Cole. And Todd, making the world a better place through canonical data models to communicate between airports, Thomas.
That's nothing. That's gobbledygook.
It's gobbledygook.
I do really like the phrase fault-tolerant. That is very
good. Yeah. It's really good writing. Guys, what do you know about Silicon Valley? Both the very real place and also the HBO Max show.
The very real place, a hive of scum and villainy you will never find the likes of on another planet. The show launched the career of Kumail Nanjiani, and tried to launch the career of Thomas Middleditch, and
he's doing okay. He does a lot of voice acting and stuff.
He's doing fine. Not quite the launch that Kumail Nanjiani has.
He's not a Marvel hero, that's for
sure. He's not a sex symbol.
No.
Well, maybe.
Yeah. I do watch Thomas Middleditch on Twitch a lot. He's fun to watch on Twitch.
Oh.
Yeah.
Real question. Is his channel the
Shut
Thomas
up.
Middleditch?
Shut up.
It's not. It should be, but
it should be. That's a missed branding opportunity right there.
Yeah. What do you guys know about the show or the place?
About the real place, it is just the land where everybody who sells out lives, and then other people who wish to sell out, that's where they go. No, about the show, I never watched Silicon Valley. It is in a similar category to me as Rick and Morty, where so many people told me I'd love it that I decided I'd never watch it. And
I feel that. I
think that from the couple of episodes, or from the couple little clips that we watched beforehand, which is literally as much of Silicon Valley as I've ever seen, I get it. I get why I think it would probably be funny. Also, I know it came out a long time ago, and I'm sure it's fucking aged like hot milk, dude. So
it's not that bad.
Oh, well, that's good.
It's definitely aged, but it's not aged as bad as you would think. That's something with its plot synopsis would have. Yeah,
I'm glad.
Plot synopsis and cast.
Yeah. I super hate TJ Miller, and I'm gonna have I'm gonna try really hard not to spend this whole podcast being but it's TJ Miller. But man, that guy sucks.
There's a lot of TJ Miller in this show.
There sure is. Yeah.
From my understanding of it, though, it's TJ Miller, and the joke is that he is TJ Miller.
It's TJ Miller, but he's also written, all his jokes are very written for him.
Yeah.
So he's not as intolerable as he is in some of his other projects.
They all hate TJ Miller as much as you do. is a good number of the jokes.
Yeah. What about you, Todd?
Yeah, same. Same and same. Same and same. TJ Miller.
Yeah.
The point that I would reference is I think we all had collectively seen the same clip of Silicon Valley that everyone had seen, which is the mathematical equation for jerking off an entire auditorium, which is fantastic.
Incredible writing. A masterclass.
Yeah, and I'll also go on record to say, Matt, I don't know if you'd like Rick and Morty. It has its very fun moments, but it's also very insufferable due to the fan base.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's one of those things that if you found it by yourself and watched it by yourself, you'd be like, huh,
yeah,
it's kind of funny. But as soon as you find out anyone else likes it and who those people are and how they act in society, you're like, that ruins it for me.
I enjoy Rick and Morty by watching the season about 6 months after it airs and not talking to anyone about it.
100%. Yep.
Yeah.
The fact that people would like wear things that say "I'm Pickle Rick," you're good.
That is how it's the same way how I intook Entourage in high school. Never talked about it to a single soul.
Yeah. Well, that's different though.
Anyway, So this show has a special place in my heart. I started it, so it came out in 2014. When this show came out, this happened to be when I lived in San Francisco. Now, granted, I didn't live in the Palo Alto, Sunnyvale, the Valley area, but I lived close enough to it. I lived in San Francisco at the height of this particular like app boom where, there's a couple jokes in here where like every Lyft driver is like pitching you on an app, and it's like the joke is like constantly they're hearing stuff like, well, wouldn't you like this a thing that like wouldn't it, it's like this but this, right? Like I lived in San Francisco, that was very much a thing. Like half of my Uber drivers, like I once had an Uber driver who was also happened to be the guy that made Mario's Time Machine. And
what? What?
Yeah.
Okay.
And like it was just a thing. Like everybody had an app. Everybody was in this space or like center, somehow like kind of around this space. My wife worked at a number of startups, and then I worked in and then I got a job in tech when I moved back here in Ohio. So when I was watching this, it was very much like Jess and I were watching this like as it came on. Like we watched like when the seasons would come out, and it was just like, oh God, this is just a mirror. Like this just it's so relevant. And I didn't go and rewatch the entire show, but I did a rewatch of just like the bookend episodes, and that's why I said, Matt, I think it holds up better than I expected it to with a lot of the jokes. Like a lot of the jokes are, it's a lot of like casual racism and sexism, but in a way that is like, again, making fun of itself, kind of Always Sunny style, where like it's the kind of comedy that really is like timeless.
Where you have to accept that the characters telling the jokes are all supposed to be awful people.
Yeah.
You are not supposed to emulate any of these characters.
No one is a hero. No one gets their happy ending, quite literally, ever. So let's jump in. Before we talk about Silicon Valley, I do want to talk a little bit about Mike Judge, a man that I don't think anyone is a stranger to, but just get a little of the background here. Man, when you talk about like a guy who is both somehow not problematic, but also has just like the series of hits that he has had. I mean, this guy is a now that's what I call music of like TV shows and movies. Like he really has
a little hard to believe.
Everything he's done, he's perfectly had his finger on the pulse of. It's insane that he's like satirized the different things he has so well.
He has an incredible track record. So Silicon Valley. So anyone who doesn't know, Silicon Valley creator and executive producer Mike Judge. So he was the one that created it. The Silicon Valley was his fourth series, fourth series after like a number of movies as well. Mike Judge was born in October 1962 in Guayaquil, Ecuador. And he was actually raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico, starting at age 3. He graduated from
Guayaquil,
I didn't practice that one.
Well, they called Albuquerque the Guayaquil of New Mexico. So.
That's I've heard that. So he graduated from UC San Diego in 1985, and then held a couple of random jobs in like physics and mechanical engineering until he eventually took a job with a company called Parallax Graphics, which is the most 80s 80s tech company name you could think of.
Yeah.
This was a startup video card company operating out of Santa Clara, which is like a little bit northeast of San Jose. And this
Parallax, also a major villain of everyone's favorite superhero, Green Lantern.
Yeah.
Thank you, Todd.
Sure.
That's for someone.
It's that big cloud one.
Right? Yeah. Not Galactus from Fantastic Four either.
Mike Judge quit Parallax about 3 months into starting. And this would officially conclude Mike Judge's entire commercial like office career.
Wow.
Wow.
Great. What a legend.
What a legend. And he cites, the quote is, people working there were, quote, like Stepford wives. They were true believers in something, although I don't know what it was. End quote.
Awesome.
Now this, and again, 2.5 month experience would ultimately inspire his 1999 film Office Space, and of course Silicon Valley 15 years later.
And what is Silicon Valley if not Office Space for the 2010s?
Obama era Office Space? Yep.
Yeah.
So throughout the next couple years, Mike Judge played bass in a touring blues band. While he was doing that, he was just kind of roaming around the country. He was just kind of dicking around creating short animated films. One of his first series were called Milton, and if anybody knows, that's the character played by Stephen Root in Office Space.
Oh,
interesting. My swing line stapler.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So Office Space started as a series of shorts. These were actually purchased by Comedy Central. So this was his first big hit. First kind of like thing that he did.
It's really fun to think of Office Space being built from the Milton up.
Right.
That's pretty great.
That is great. Yeah. That's interesting.
That's often how these things happen. Is you have like a funny character and you just kind of build the situation around it. But
I mean, we'll get to it. That's how King of the Hill spun off of a character,
Beavis and Butthead character.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ted Lasso spun off of an ESPN
commercial.
Yeah.
So did the first Space Jam.
Interesting you noted Beavis and Butthead. Okay. Interesting you noted Beavis and Butthead. Judge created after Milton, he created another short film called Frog Baseball.
Yeah.
Which is what birthed the characters Beavis and Butthead.
Man, this is like a timestamp. I mean, I was a kid when Beavis and Butthead was on, and
loved Beavis and Butthead. My dad and I used to watch it together all the time. Great show.
I had the Beavis and Butthead trading cards. It was the show
the Beavis and Butthead Pogs.
Yeah, the Beavis and Butthead Pogs. Well, we had a Pog maker, and so we'd make our own.
Oh, sure.
But what a specific nostalgic moment where this was definitely on the list of shows we were not supposed to be watching as kids.
Yeah.
But we would turn on anyway. And as long as my mom didn't walk by while we were watching it, then we got away with it.
Yeah, I feel like for somehow Beavis and Butthead became the you can't have your kids watch this, and then South Park came out, and then that was the devil.
Well, the through line was it was first Beavis and Butthead, and then it was Ren and Stimpy. They were sides of the same coin of that's gonna poison your kids' brains. It's no, because it's not Ren and Stimpy. It's Rocko's Modern Life that had a sex phone line. That's the one you should have been watching out for.
I mean, Ren and Stimpy had that scene where he was sawing that log where it was between his legs.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's some pretty classic scenes.
I'm pretty sure was it Powdered Toast Man that had nipples that would latch onto your eyes that you could see the future?
Yeah, man.
Sure did.
What an incredible sentence.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, we're not talking about Ren and Stimpy today. But so following the success of Beavis and Butthead, that ran for a number of years on MTV, as we all know. Mike Judge teamed up with then Simpsons writer Greg Daniels, who many will remember as co-creator of The Office. And they created King of the Hill, an animated sitcom featuring a suburban family in Dallas, Texas. This would air alongside The Simpsons on Sundays on Fox until it ended in 2009. So about 13, 14 years.
Had an incredible run. Yeah.
Arguably his biggest hit. So at the height of King of the Hill's success, Mike Judge sold the full movie of Office Space, which of course pulled from those Milton shorts, And many know that movie didn't do well initially in its original release, but only a few later would become a cult hit and, of course, staple of any college-aged millennials DVD catalog, including, I assume, all four of us.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I actually... You know what? We had it at some point. My sister had it, or I had it.
Yeah. I do not own a copy of Office Space, but I've seen it enough.
Yeah,
it's always like 1 degree away from a DVD of Office Space.
I could get it tonight if I had
to. So Mike Judge wrote and directed 2 live-action movies after following Office Space. One in 2006 called Idiocracy, starring Luke Wilson and Maya Rudolph, and then another in 2009 called Extract, starring Jason Bateman and Mila Kunis, both of which were, again, considered to be like pretty cult hit live-action comedies. In 2010, he created a new animated series for ABC called The Good Family, but that was canceled after its first season. And then finally, in 2013, Judge teamed up with 2 ex-executive producers from King of the Hill to create Silicon Valley, which is, of course, a live-action series highlighting the cult-like absurdity of the tech hub in the Bay Area. So the pilot to Silicon Valley was shot in Palo Alto in March of 2013, and then was picked up by HBO in May of that same year, so pretty quick. And HBO like immediately greenlit the series. This thing, like, again, they had a record-breaking creator on this name. Like, this thing there was never a question if Silicon Valley was going to be bought for another season.
Yeah, like of the things you listed, I think Extract and The Good Family were his only 2 middling efforts. Not even bad, just didn't find their audience. Like
Yeah, I mean, created by Mike Judge holds a lot of weight.
Yeah.
So episode 1 of Silicon Valley aired on April 6, 2014, so 1 year later. It was an immediate hit. It came out at exactly the right time. The show, in its first year, earned Emmy nominations for Best Director, Best Writing for the season 1 finale, and Best Comedy Series. Never won an Emmy, but was nominated almost every year. The show ran for 6 whole years and maintained pretty high marks on all of the sites, Rotten Tomatoes, et cetera, until it concluded in December of 2019 with a series finale that works kind of like the Parks and Rec finale, and then it's a documentary shot 10 years later, so we get a little bit of like a where are they now kind of thing.
That's cool. I've never seen the Parks and Rec finale, but that's fun.
Oh, well, spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
That show came out a whole bunch of years ago.
Since Silicon Valley's ending, Mike Judge has spearheaded revivals of both Beavis and Butthead and King of the Hill, because that's the cycle that we're living in.
Yeah.
The former having aired its second newest season on Paramount Plus, which only Matt has, and the latter having been purchased by Hulu in January of 2023, yet that one's still a little up in the air, so we don't know if King of the Hill is actually happening or not, but it's been purchased.
Those Hulu reboots aren't doing so great, so I can see Hulu quietly putting that one back on the shelf.
I don't need a King of the Hill episode where we have to talk Dale out of going to the January 6th insurrection. I don't need it.
No.
I don't need Hank learning how to use an iPhone. We don't need to talk Dale out of going to the January 6th insurrection.
You're right.
I
don't need whatever the other Boomhauer, and then the 4th guy.
The other guy.
The other guy. I don't need him to deal with online dating apps. I don't need
Let's,
Boomhauer to learn Duolingo.
Let's stop talking about King of the Hill and get into it. All right. So I had you guys watch the opening scene of the pilot, which actually takes place at a party and prominently features a character that we'll never see again. But I do feel like that opening scene really does a good job in setting the overall scene and the vibe of Silicon Valley, which again, this is kind of one notch between Seinfeld and Always Sunny, in that these people are not good people. They're still the protagonists and they still make morally positive decisions, but you're not really rooting for them. You're kind of the cadence of the show is how are the guys going to get out of this jam this time, right? It's one of those things. You don't root for Richard to get the girl, because you're no, you probably don't. she's better than you, man. You suck. But it also shows, again, it does a good job of setting like the scene of Silicon Valley, which is a bunch of rich, insane billionaires with more money than they know what to do with, doing ridiculous things to spend that money. And it's very funny. It's very funny because these are cartoonish villains. Because no billionaires are good billionaires. That's
true story. Ain't that the truth?
The tagline of our show.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
Episode 1, titled Minimum Viable Product, introduces us to our main cast of characters. We've got, as we always do, or as we usually do, there is an Imager folder. You can click that in the show notes, and then we've got just some kind of promo images of some of these main characters, as well as just a couple gags, visual gags throughout the series. So image 1, we've got our series protagonist Richard Hendricks, who is a meek, hoodie-clad developer working a mid-level coding job at Hooli, Hooli, the Valley's most successful and very fictional tech giant that is definitely, absolutely not Google.
Cool.
Richard is played by Thomas Middleditch, or Thomas Middletwitch, as
I love that. Thomas
earlier.
Middletwitch.
So Richard is your stereotypical, again, he's your hoodie billionaire, or hoodie coder. He is, your series insert for like a Jack Dorsey Twitter guy,
Yeah.
Where his whole thing, he's very idyllic. His whole kind of arc is like, he's the one that owns this company, and he's goddamn it, he's going to do it the right way. Spoiler, he's not going to do it the right way.
Is he our character insert or viewer insert, or is he?
I would say that there isn't necessarily a viewer insert, because again, this is like in Always Sunny. Everybody is absurd,
sure,
in their own weird kind of fucked up way. So Richard's best friend, Nelson Big Head Bighetti, this is image 2, a lovable if not clueless developer who lives with and works alongside Richard at Hooli. Big Head is played by Josh Brenner. Big Head's he's just a sweet kid.
This guy's in Mythic Quest. He's in he has a cameo part in Mythic Quest.
He is, yeah. He plays the young version of the writer, right?
Yeah, young CW.
Yeah. I was gonna ask where else this guy is.
That's the only other place I know.
Big Head's whole bit is that he fails up. So while while Richard is constantly like fighting and just like constantly shown all these obstacles, Big Head just kind of like always just kind of lucks out. He just kind of floats through life completely clueless. He's always shown with a big ass big gulp. It's very funny. He's a sweet kid. So Richard lives in this shared house in Palo Alto with other tech mogul wannabes at a startup incubator, and I'm using very heavy air quotes there. This startup incubator is owned by one Erlich Bachman, who is played by the famously problematic TJ Miller.
What a shitty name.
Incredibly problematic.
Yeah.
One of the worst people in Hollywood.
So let's just quickly let's get it out now. Let's get out the TJ Miller shit now. So TJ Miller was much like he was kicked out of all of Hollywood. He was kicked off this show beginning in season 5. It is very unclear who left who, because in interviews TJ Miller says that he left, but with interviews with crew, Mike Judge says that basically like dude was on 1,000 different drugs most when they were shooting, and like even like when they would take breaks, like people would have to wake him up just to like keep shooting, and like there were days where they couldn't even shoot because he was so high and so fucked up. So who knows what actually happened, but I think, and this is what's hard, because I think the character Erlich Bachman is funny and has like a lot of good bits. I think they wrote this character really well, and like it's Todd, or Kyle, mentioned earlier, but like you're supposed to hate him, so like it's fine.
Yeah.
And TJ Miller is very hateable, so like fine.
Super hateable.
Yeah. It's that real life thing of like you're supposed to hate the character the actor is playing.
Yeah.
Surprise, it turns out the actor isn't doing all that much acting.
Right.
Yeah.
So the deal with Erlich Bachman is, like I said, he owns this startup incubator. He is the like the guy who sold. So, this is very much a thing in this culture, right? Like the whole point of having a startup is to eventually sell. Erlich Bachman had a startup. The name is Aviato. That is how he says it. That's the joke. Is it Aviato? He says it very like dramatically. It is never once described what Aviato is or was, or who it was sold to, or it just exists as his van, as his painted van.
Great.
And so he got like a small fortune from that. But so he owns this house, and his whole deal is he owns 10% of, like, the agreement is he owns 10% of anything any of these guys create at his house. So all of the main characters live at this house. So Big Head, Richard, and then these other two guys, which we've got Dinesh Chugtai, which is, of course, Kumail Nanjiani, and Bertram Guilfoyle, a.k.a. Guilfoyle, who is played by Martin Starr.
Martin
Starr.
Love to see Martin Starr show up in things.
Man, I'm a big Martin Starr fan. He comes to us all the way back from Freaks and Geeks. Mm-hmm. He was on Party Down. He was excellent in Party Down.
Famously now the principal in the Spider-Man movies.
Principal in the Spider-Man movies. Yeah, so we've got 2 MCU ties here. Probably more. I'm sure Matt's looking for more.
I haven't started looking, but I'm sure that I can find them.
So Dinesh and Guilfoyle, these are like their main two supporting characters. These two are Richard's right and left hands. They're both other coders, but they do different things. So Dinesh is more of like a front end engineer. Guilfoyle is all back end. He's more like servers and networks and things like that. And their whole thing is like they're just constantly at each other the whole time. And like that's the bit.
From what I've seen, Guilfoyle is the just the unbearable dev that you have met.
They're both unbearable. Guilfoyle is a nihilist and Dinesh is an egoist. So Dinesh is 1000% all about him and his own self-image. Guilfoyle is he's just pure chaos. Nothing matters. He's pure nihilism.
Okay.
He's also a Satanist, which is fun because I think this was a time when we didn't really know what Satanism was.
Sure. Yeah.
So, like I said, Richard, along with the other guys at this incubator, they toil away at their soulless day jobs to fund the living accommodations necessary so that they can focus on their own personal projects. So they all have their own thing. Big Head has like a nipple finder. Like it's like basically like you can find exactly like they have really dumb things that they make a joke about in Pilot 1. But the main focus here is Richard's pet project, and it is an application he calls Pied Piper. And the whole point of Pied Piper is it's an app to software intended for musicians to kind of like go on this site and upload their own music to match against a database to see if they have any possible copyright infringement. So and the bit is like it sucks, it's garbage. Nobody gives a shit about Pied Piper. But Richard, decides to take the opportunity to cold pitch a venture capital icon and autistic billionaire, Peter Gregory, played by the late Christopher Evan Welch. So that's Peter Gregory in Image 6. Peter Gregory is a very now unfortunate characterization of Peter Thiel. Before it was kind of universally known that Peter Thiel was secretly funding an alt-right revolution. Whoops.
Yeah.
Because again, this is 2014. This is Elon Musk and Iron Man 2 era. Right? Like that's the part of the show that has not aged well, is the like still kind of worshiping of these like tech giants. Peter Gregory as a character is very funny because he's like, one, clearly autistic, but two, like he's got that like undetached billionaire personality. The image that I show here is of him trying to understand what Burger King is. So he literally has his assistant go and get one of everything at a Burger King, and he's like trying to understand it. Like, why does this exist? It's very funny. Peter Gregory, of course, is unimpressed being cold pitched by this kid, but his assistant Monica Hall, who is played by Amanda Crew, Monica decides to take a chance on the idyllic Richard and take a look at his app, and Monica's in Image 7. And Monica is the closest thing to a kind of straight man character. She's your Adam Scott in Parks and Rec. She's the only person that is like actually smart and knows what she's doing. But so people rarely listen to her.
Yeah,
of course.
So while all this is going on, some of the brogrammers, that's right, brogrammers at Hooli get a hold of Richard's app code and realize that while this app itself is garbage, the technology fueling it is unparalleled. He's really got something here. And the whole point of this is Richard built an algorithm to compress files. In order to match against a database, you would have to be able to transfer files. And what they find is the compression that he has built, the compression technology, is faster, more efficient, is like basically like techno jarble mumbo jumbo. What he's built is super innovative, and this is like a valuable technology that a lot of people would want to get their hands on. And of course, Richard has no idea.
I understand everything about why that would be an amazing technological advance.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, the applications are, and that's exactly like the whole point of the pilot. So this gets all the way up to the cartoonishly tech CEO of Hulu, Gavin Belson, played by Matt Ross. Now, man, Gavin Belson is something. He is the definition of tech billionaire. He's got an army of yes men surrounding him at all times. He's constantly shown either pre or post interview. He's, very into himself, obviously. He does insane billionaire things, like he keeps a spiritual guru on retainer. He holds bike meetings. There's one scene where he brings in a live elephant just to be able to point out to the live elephant in a board meeting and to make a point.
That's
to do the elephant in the room.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got old Gavin Belson in image 8 here.
Much like the last guy was a Peter Thiel stand-in. Is Gavin Belson a stand-in for any?
Yeah, this
IRL
is absolutely the Larry and who are the Google guys? Larry Page and Sergey Brin.
Oh, okay. The Google guys.
This is who he is.
Gotcha.
So Richard now finds himself in a bidding war / pissing contest between billionaire rivals Gavin Belson and now Peter Gregory, who Monica makes the same realization that like, oh shit, this guy has some technology on his hands. So Gavin offers Richard $10 million outright to just buy Pied Piper. And he's like, I'll give you $10, so I'll own it. And he also offers him a cushiony VP role at Hulu because he already works there. While Peter Gregory offers Richard a 5% stake in Pied Piper at $200,000, along with the kind of business daddy mentorship that can only come from a Silicon Valley VC such as him.
Right.
So basically, the decision that Richard has to make is, do you want to own this company or do you want to sell the technology and get rich? If Richard took the money, this wouldn't be a show.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
But like, obviously, the right answer is take the money. Take the money. Take the money.
Why
Absolutely
you
take the money.
$10 million is $10 million.
So because this is a show, season 1 now walks us through. So that's the end of the pilot. So the rest of season 1 really illustrates the construction of Pied Piper as a company, leading up to their first big public appearance at TechCrunch Disrupt, which is a startup competition. So this is kind of their like coming out kind of moment.
It sucks so bad.
Yeah,
it super does.
So I'm gonna yada through season 1 because there's again like kind of like when we did Mythic Quest. The major plot beats are on the bookend episodes. There's a bunch of jokes here, and like again, if you want jokes about tech, you got them, baby. Like there's tons of jokes here.
It's season 1 is a problem of the week format.
Right, problem of the week. There are also this is an HBO show, so there aren't a ton of episodes. There's like 8 episodes.
Yeah.
So like, they have to find a logo. They have to figure out, where they're going to store their servers, like that kind of thing. But a couple of the major points here. So the gang realizes, so at the end of the pilot, it's like Richard's going to run the company and everyone's joining. All his buddies are going to be a part of it. Except they realize that like, while Big Head's a nice dude, he doesn't really bring anything to the table. He's kind of a moron. Because he has the same capabilities as Richard in programming, but like is not as good as a programmer as Richard. Dinesh does what Richard doesn't do, and then Guilfoyle does what they both don't do, right? So they all kind of have their different sectors. So they kind of convince Richard like to get rid of Big Head because he's just kind of dead weight. So Richard fires his buddy, but no worries because Big Head is actually offered a VP position in Hulu's innovation division, which is
perfect.
Completely just a publicity stunt. So Gavin Belson can say that he has one of the co-founders of Pied Piper.
Right. Yeah, of course.
So Big Head spends 2 seasons just like hanging out at Huli. So like you'll see episodes with him just like chilling on the roof and like, you guys, what do you guys do? And they're like, I don't know. It's like, me neither. Anyway, it's very funny. Meanwhile, Gavin Belson's assistant, who orchestrated that original offer in the pilot, decides to leave Huli and pursues Richard to help him attain the dream of Pied Piper. His name is Donald Dunn, but one time Gavin called him Jared and never corrected him. So Jared becomes the 5th member of the crew. And I think Jared is the best part of this show. Some may remember him as Gabe from The Office.
Of course we remember him as Gabe from The Office.
Jared is played by Zach Woods, who again famously played Gabe in The Office. Zach is just a special kind of guy. He's the best character. Jared is like originally kind of like the business guy. Like he knows the books, he knows the accounting, he knows a lot of the like the legal stuff. But more importantly, Jared is just like the most loyal to a fault with Richard. He truly believes in Richard, where like Dinesh and Guilfoyle are just kind of in it just for the bit. Jared like truly believes in whatever Richard says, despite the fact that half the time Richard doesn't believe in what he says. He's very sweet. Also, Zach Woods famously like is the best improver of this group and often will improv his own lines. So Jared has this like ridiculous backstory where he was like, he was homeless for years. He grew up in foster homes, but like Zach Woods would just like kind of alter the story every now and then. Like his backstory is very convoluted. It's funny. So the season continues on, yada, yada, yada. Richard is, dealing with the overwhelming pressure of being a CEO. Richard's whole vibe is like, he stutters. He's very like, he's very meek. He's a nerd. He's Hollywood's depiction of a nerdy coder, right? Yeah. So like he can't handle, he has no idea what the fuck he's doing. He's way over his head. The dude should have just taken the money. And so Guilfoyle and Dinesh, spend their time building the infrastructure. They do their thing. Ehrlich is still around. Ehrlich is like the part of this crew, but he's like he originally maintains himself as like Richard Steve Jobs, like he's the face. He does the financing. He talks to the VCs and all that stuff, but really like he fucks everything up. That's the whole joke of the character. The only reason he's there is because he owns that 10% because of the incubator. So while this is all happening, Gavin Belson enlists a strike team of Huli engineers to create their own version of Pied Piper that they call Nucleus, which is just, again, that compression algorithm. This is headed by those programmers that worked at Huli. That's a fun bit. So everything in season 1 comes to a head at this TechCrunch Disrupt, which is an event that's Pied Piper and both Nucleus are going to face off against each other, among other app developers. Things get a little bit complicated when Ehrlich has sex with one of the judge's wives because he was trying to fix a situation in which Ehrlich had sex with one of the judge's earlier wives.
I see. Okay.
Sure.
Jeez.
So, we'll talk a little bit about the final episode. So everyone knows about the dick joke, but there's another really interesting thing in these final 2 episodes. So as a way to illustrate to the audience how good this compression algorithm is, the writers and producers of Silicon Valley made a completely made up tech rating score that they called Weissman score, or Weissman scale. This was an actual legitimately like based on science fictional scale created by Stanford professor Tsachy. I do not know how you say that. Weissman. And a graduate student at the request of the show's producers. So they cite this thing as like, this compression algorithm has a 2.89 Weissman score, totally made up. And a lot of people and the writers will have said in interviews like they're proud of how many people look up what things have, like what Weissman score things have.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. It has the same vibe as like David X. Cohen, who made Futurama, putting a bunch of like very intricate math jokes in The Simpsons and them predicting, like, and them accidentally predicting the Higgs boson.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's like that thing, like nerd humor. So the whole thing is that the Nucleus group go up first, and they do their tech demo, and they get a 2.89 Weissman score, which is the exact same thing that Pied Piper was getting. Pied Piper's like, well, we're fucked because we're not bringing anything to the table, and we can't compete with Google, right? So they're like, well, this is it. So the lead up to that famous scene of the dick jerk joke is the team is like, we're out of this competition. Pied Piper is over. Like, we're done before we even got started. And they're sulking in their room. And as they're drinking to the death of Pied Piper, Ehrlich makes a comment that, like, what would I have to, like, I would have to effectively jerk off every single person in the audience. And then the series is like, you know, and Dinesh is like, well, and that's like at least 800
what would
people.
That take?
What would that take? So it's like, well, that's at least like 800 people. And it's like, you'd have to at least jerk off 2 guys at a time. Oh, but what if you jerked off 4 guys at a time and they stood face to face? And then there's a bit where they're like doing the mathematical equation of dick to floor ratio. So it's like, as long as they have the same D2F, it's such a good elaborate joke. But they make a bit there where it's like, okay, he says, yeah, 4 dicks at the same time, and they look, the guy, he's like doing the full motions, and is like, yeah, middle out. And then while this is happening, Richard's like, holy shit, middle out, and has like a house moment where he like runs into his side room and is inspired to reconfigure the entire code base overnight to use a middle out compression instead of a top down compression. That means nothing, but it's the way that the files compress effectively. So Richard rewrites everything, and then they put the untested demo or tech to a demo, and they get a 5.2 Weissman score, which is a lot of nothing, but it's a bigger number.
More tech garbage.
Exactly. Yeah. So now Pied Piper is the belle of the ball. They're the hottest thing in Silicon Valley, and that's where we end season 1. So season 2 begins right where it picks off. Pied Piper is, literally batting away VCs, throwing funding at them, but they're waiting for Peter Gregory's firm, which is called Reviga. So mind you that Peter Gregory's kind of been in the background, except he hasn't, because that actor who did that bit actually died of lung cancer before the show aired. While the show was shooting, Christopher Evan Walsh actually died. He only was able to do the first 5 episodes. So they reference him a couple times, but it mostly is just Monica. And, by the time the show aired, like, he had already passed. So they just decided to, like, no, we're not going to reshoot it. We're just going to let him, we'll have that film. So they actually kill off the character of Peter Gregory at the beginning of season 2. And he's replaced with a different character named Lori Bream, who I don't have an image of here. She's basically just a female version of Peter Gregory, but she's like tough as nails and like very like practical in a way different from Peter Gregory. So like Peter Gregory and Monica have like a mentor-mentee relationship. Monica and Lori Bream like do not get along. Lori Bream like
sure.
There's a joke at some point where Lori Bream gets pregnant just to prove to Monica that she doesn't need to take off work days for work. She's like, oh yeah, I induced this morning. Yeah. But she's very funny. The actress that plays her is very funny, but it's a rough caricature. So anyway, Reviga, now headed by Lori Bream, offers Pied Piper the biggest deal of all the other VCs. But Monica like shows up offline and is like, Richard, don't take this deal. And I think this was like, again, as the character who is the only smart person in the room, she's basically like, Richard, like, you guys are accepting this like ridiculous growth trajectory. You'll never hit it. You'll get the money, but you'll never meet your goals, and you're going to be bankrupt in 6 months, and then you're going to lose everything. And he's like, fuck, you're right. So they ask for less money, actually, but it doesn't matter anyway, because it's found out that Gavin Belson is suing Pied Piper for the IP on the grounds that Richard was at Huli while he built that tech. So the major arc in season 2 is this lawsuit. So Pied Piper goes from like top of the heap to the bottom of the proverbial totem pole. Nobody wants to touch them when they're in an impending lawsuit. So Gavin, takes this opportunity to corner Richard with a lowball offer to acquire Pied Piper. He will do this a lot. Instead of selling, though, Richard, and again, like Richard's whole thing is like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep my company. Richard seeks funding from the least desirable and most insane of all these insane billionaires, Russ Hanneman, a man who has multiple cars that have doors that go like this, and I'm moving my hands upward like in a vertical style, and made millions.
The only way that you would ever need to use your hands to describe a car door.
Yeah, I think they're called suicide doors.
No, those are butterfly doors.
Yeah,
suicide doors open for. Whoop, geez. Suicide doors open backwards.
This is really good for an audio medium.
Yeah, sure is.
And Russ Hanneman made millions by, quote, putting radio on the internet. I don't know what that means. So Russ Hanneman is Image 10. He's something. So this is your Mark Cuban type, if you will.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So he's kind of like, he shows up, there's a bit with him. He bought this tequila that's called Tres Commas, and his whole thing is like, Tres Commas, it's got 3 commas. I don't know.
That's so dumb.
He's got a lot of catchphrases. So while this is happening, Big Head is promoted to the head of Hooli XYZ. Nobody knows what Hooli XYZ is. And the best part is Big Head is featured as like an industry innovator in like Wired. So there's a scene where they cut, and they do a lot of good like visual gags with Big Head. There's just a scene of him like kind of like dead eye empty looking at a magazine. He's reading a magazine, and it's the magazine with him on the front of it.
Of course.
Really funny. Guilfoyle and Dinesh build out an entire complicated server structure in their house's garage. Despite their neighbors' disapproval, this leads to a couple potential lawsuits with the neighbors, and then they counter with a lawsuit that some illegal ferrets living at the neighbor's house. Hanneman blows a bunch of money on Piper merch. You know how it is. So in an attempt, there's a bit where in an attempt to promote their technology, now they're kind of, they're going from just this compression algorithm to building more of like a platform essentially. So the guys partner with Homicide Energy Drink to stream an upcoming live stunt that's being performed by a guy Ehrlich knows named Blaine.
Just a guy? Just like a guy?
He's a stunt driver. Dinesh and Guilfoyle, though, notice like on some footage that Blaine has miscalculated the ramp speed and will probably get killed by this stunt. So the gang has to, in one of the many times, has to evaluate, do we keep the company or do we do something that will save somebody's life? And they build a SWOT analysis to determine whether or not they should let Blaine die.
Oh my God.
So that's Image 11.
Insane.
That's wild.
The let Blaine die SWOT analysis is really good.
I want to back up a little bit just to say Homicide Energy Drink is what Panera should call their lemonade.
The charged lemonade.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. So fortunately, they don't have to make this decision, and the stunt ends up getting canceled, along with the partnership with Homicide. Instead, Richard strikes an opposing deal to stream live footage of a condor's nest with the local museum. This will come back later.
All right.
So it's finally time for the arbitration. During the proceedings, Hooli's lawyers claim that Richard used Hooli equipment to build Pied Piper, right? That's the whole case. Richard initially maintains that, like, nope, everything was separate. And then he realizes, like, at one point he emailed himself something one time without thinking, and that is enough. And this particular scene haunted me for years when I would like be at work doing debate this stuff, and I was like, oh my God, if I ever make it big, if ever debate this ever makes $1 billion, I could get sued by my current employer. We're fine.
They're gonna own us.
Yeah, we ended up being fine. It's fine. But while all of this is happening, Pied Piper is now live streaming this condor nest footage. Of course, it's a condor nest. Nothing's really happening. Nobody's watching. That is until a technician who's coming from the museum to take the camera. So like the nest is like in like a little ravine, like it's like a nature preserve type of environment.
Yeah.
The technician comes to like unhook this camera and trips and falls into the ravine and is like stuck there. And camera and this camera footage is just of this man like, help. It's really fucked up. But like, there's an entire episode where every time they're showing this footage, it's just like this poor man, like, is there anybody out there? And it's like him slowly coming to grips with his death, while like, of course, more and more people are watching. The views are going up,
of course.
So everyone's like, hell yeah, like they're just watching the numbers and like, yeah, what are we gonna do? We're like, help! Like, yeah, so I think we're gonna need to like increase the server structure here. And there's a certain point where like he's becoming insane, and he's like narrating what he's doing. Is like, I'm feeling real dehydrated now, and I'm gonna have to pee into my water bottle. And like Dinesh and Guilfoyle are like, oh shit, is he gonna piss himself? He's gonna drink his own piss? and they're like, Dinesh, get in here. We have to update the servers. This man's gonna drink his piss.
Right, like, because that would be the joke being that would be the best thing to have happen. On this ongoing stream.
Right,
exactly. It goes viral in the Philippines and then gets memed.
Yeah,
so
but all at the expense of we're letting this man die for our views.
Yeah, we're watching this man slowly die. So while tens of thousands of people watch this man come to grips with his own mortality, Richard attends the final session of the arbitration with Hooli, ready for them to like take everything. Basically, like this whole Condor thing is kind of like a last hurrah. And that's, you know, kind of the overplayed bit with Silicon Valley is every season it's Pied Piper's last day until it isn't, right?
Yeah.
And of course, however, at the last moment, it's revealed that, well, actually, the judge found that Richard and Jared's employment agreements with Hooli included non-compete clauses that are legal in the state of California, effectively nullifying those employment agreements and by extension nullifying Hooli's case against them. So Richard and Jared never worked at Hooli on a technicality, exactly. So the last scene of season 2 is Dinesh, Guilfoyle, and Jared attempting to keep Pied Piper servers alive long enough to make it to the technician drinking his own piss on live stream. And of course, and then the guys are back on top once again. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the final couple of seasons of Silicon Valley. We're going to move it pretty quick, except we're going to talk about the incomparable Stephen Tobolowsky when we return. And we're back. Okay, so seasons 3 and 4, we're going to go a lot quicker here. So now with a proven technology and no impending lawsuit, Pied Piper is once again back on top, the talk of the valley. Except we now have Reviga, which Peter Gregory, now Laurie Bream's VC company. Reviga owns 3 of the 5 board seats, which doesn't mean anything other than she's able to quickly oust Richard as CEO and replace him with her own pick, veteran tech giant Action Jack Barker, played by the one, the only, you know him, you love him, Stephen Tobolowsky in Image 12.
What do I know him from?
Everything.
What do I love him from?
Groundhog Day.
He's been in everything.
He has been.
Okay, well, so far you've said Groundhog Day, and Andrew said everything twice.
He's Ned Ryerson.
Ned Ryerson. Day. He plays. He shows up in Glee, but I don't want to bring up.
Okay, really, you bookended it with Groundhog Day and Glee. So
I didn't want to bring up Glee on this show once again. I mean, he always shows up in random pieces, right? He's been in an episode of The Goldbergs. He's been in Grace and Frankie. He's been in.
You're really doing it right now.
He's been voices in Animaniacs.
Okay, that's the best.
He's one of those. He's one of those.
He's just a character actor. I don't know.
That has kind of become a meme because he was Ned Ryerson in Groundhog Day, and then he
just shows up all over the place.
That guy, and he showed up all over the place.
I don't. That's the thing. I don't think he has one iconic role. I mean, his IMDb page is known for it's Thelma and Louise and Wild Hogs. What do you want from me?
Well, and there's the Tim Allen insert. Okay, we did it. We can move on.
Yeah. He's got 300 entries on
IMDb.
Yeah,
I just wanted us to mention.
I just wanted
2008's Wild Hogs.
I wanted to get two degrees away from Tim Allen.
291 entries on IMDb.
Yeah,
the man is a legend.
Legendary character actor Stephen Toblerone.
Stephen Toblerone.
Stephen Toblerone.
So Gavin Belson, meanwhile, while this is happening, is on the heels of a lost arbitration, looking pretty bad to the Hooli board. That is until one of his cronies realizes that because of this employment agreement debacle, where effectively 20% of Hooli doesn't actually work at Hooli, he can just fire them on the spot without severance pay. Which he does. They're in this one scene played as a bit, predicted the state of tech 6 years later.
Yeah.
Hey. And I was watching this part of my rewatch. I was like, did Gavin Belson fucking invent the 15 to 20% riff?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yep.
Among the people let go is Big Head. But Big Head fortunately gets while he doesn't get severance, he gets a $20 million non-disparagement agreement. Cool.
Great.
Notably, it should be noted, double the initial offer.
Yep. Yep.
Pied Piper got from,
sure.
Yeah.
Well, he was published in Wired magazine, Kyle.
I mean, yeah.
So Action Jack seems to be a perfect CEO at first, but then the cracks begin to show. Following his time in the .com burst, Jack, his whole thing is like, we gotta increase productivity. We gotta get sales. So Jack hires this huge team of salespeople to drive product for a product that doesn't exist. Following his patented triangles of success, which is image 13. And
awesome.
Yeah, the conjoined triangles of success. And if you're not looking at the image, I'm just going to explain it. It is literally a square with a line going from the diagonal bottom left to the diagonally to the top right. And it says engineering on the left, sales on the right. And there's a line, and then it says compromise in the middle. Yeah.
I fucking hate it.
Yeah.
I hate it so much because I've been in too many presentations where this shit shows up.
We've all seen this graph
here.
with different XY values.
If I have to hear one more person tell me that Simon Sinek's start with Y is the way to unpack something, people are gonna catch hands.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As somebody who works in tech, who is neither sales nor engineering, I think this hits me at a particular point because it is very much a thing that sales and engineering are the only departments that ever get any funding and that ever get any focus, and everyone else is expendable.
Correct.
And this just it's gross. It's a very accurate depiction of corporate America.
Yeah.
So Jack's other big move is to commercialize Pied Piper in the form of what he calls the box. Which is basically a cable box. He makes a cable box. And of course, Richard hates this. Richard and the guys hate this. This goes against everything that they want. So Jack feverishly pursues the box, and his, disassociation, his attachment to the old ways leads him to make some bad calls and virtually bankrupts Pied Piper, to which Raviga fires him and reinstates Richard as CEO. While this is happening, Ehrlich cons Big Head into putting up his non-disparagement agreement cash to start a new joint venture called Bachmanity. They're going to be a VC.
Okay.
I should explain, while all this is happening, there's another character that I haven't talked about who is only in the B plots. There's a character named Jimmy O Yang. This was kind of like his breakout role. If anyone knows who Jimmy O Yang is, he's an incredibly hilarious comedian. He was in Crazy Rich Asians, but this was like his first big kind of breakout role.
Sure.
Zhun Yang is so Ehrlich's kind of like an antagonist character early on. Zhun Yang is the antagonist to Ehrlich, and Zhun Yang is making shitty apps in the background through all of this is happening. Eventually Zhun Yang, the joke is when Ehrlich gets written off the show, the joke is that Zhun Yang killed him and took his identity.
Awesome.
It's very funny. Yeah. It's very funny. And Jimmy O Yang is doing a very cartoonishly Chinese American accent. because he's natively from Hong Kong, which is cool. But Jimmy O Yang, very funny guy. We're not going to talk about him again because he's irrelevant to this, but he's good. He's a good character. Anyway, so Richard starts dating, this is a couple side plots. Richard's dating a woman who works as a coder for Facebook, but Guilfoyle and Dinesh notice that she uses spaces instead of tabs in her code. So Richard breaks it off.
That's a George Costanza plot.
Yep.
2020,
Sure
2019, if I ever heard one.
Yeah. So Pied Piper is now like fully a streaming platform. They're steadily seeing new daily active users, but it's just not enough. So they realize that because the beta of the platform was just sent to engineers, like nobody understands it. Like nobody but coders understands it. So as a result, Dinesh pulls together some code and builds in like a native video chat app, which is actually like working really well and tends to be the only thing people use in this platform. However, like the numbers still aren't there. And so they're at the point now, they're at the end of their Series A capital. So it's like their first major round of funding. They have to get another round of funding, which means they need to prove that they're still profitable. So as a way to show that they have as many users as they need, Jared secretly employs a click farm in Bangladesh to like juice the numbers.
Boy.
Yeah. So the moral dilemma here is like, do they go on and accept this money knowing that they've just like frauded a bunch of, rich VCs?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Hooli brings on Jack Barker as the new head of Nucleus, which just so happens to be now a box. So Action Jack is building the box at Hooli. Richard, like I said, nearly commits fraud. And at the last second, tells the VC guys what he did and tanks the whole thing. So now they're back to where they were in season 2. Nobody wants to buy Pied Piper. They're out of money. Oh my God, we're gonna go under. Gavin offers to buy Hooli from Raviga for a paltry $1 million. And then at the last second, it's revealed that a second buyer came through for $1,001, and it's Bachmanity.
Great.
Good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
Do you mean by Pied Piper?
Yeah. What did I say?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
that's what you said. I said the wrong thing back when you were talking.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dumb names here. Yeah, thank you for correcting. Yeah. So now Ehrlich and Big Head and Big Head's dad own Pied Piper. Great.
Excellent.
So now with season 4, Pied Piper has pivoted fully to this video chat that Dinesh created called Piper Chat, which is where we start to see how shitty of a person Richard is. Because Richard like is such an egotist that like he can't handle leading something that he didn't create himself.
Right.
So, Richard's just like, I just can't bring myself to do this paper chat because I'm not interested in it. It's like, no, you just didn't create it. You're just kind of an asshole.
Right.
So Richard pulls back in Russ Hanneman out of nowhere. And he's talking to Russ Hanneman, and Richard decides that he doesn't want to do Pied Piper anymore. Instead, he wants to build his new dream, a decentralized internet, which comes from a very real, this was based on a real situation with there was like a maid site, and I looked this up and I forgot. So this was inspired by a real attempt for creating a decentralized web by a company called MaidSafe. And several of the team members actually consulted on the series. So it's just kind of fun.
Oh,
kind of funny.
Interesting.
What would decentralized internet be?
I mean, it's basically nobody owns the internet, right? Like nobody, like in a way that like AT&T and Comcast like can't own the internet, or like Google can't own the internet. Like, so the internet is not housed in one place on servers. The idea that he speds is he's like, we put a man on the moon with the computing power of a calculator, right? But like, I have something in my pocket that's 1,000,000 times the power of a calculator, and everybody has one. So like we could just network everyone's devices together, and like the internet exists on all of our devices instead of like in one place.
It's the I guess internet version of the old, like the scam where you would download something and it would put a Bitcoin miner on your computer.
Yeah, we're putting the internet on the blockchain.
Yeah.
Because again, remember, it's 2018.
It's 2018.
And
nothing bad has happened yet.
Or 2017.
If Bitcoin had been bigger in 2017, this would have been there.
We're going to get to Bitcoin.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. So now Dinesh is the new CEO of Piper Chat, and oops, looks like a third of the app's users are minors, and the terms and conditions don't include parental permission. So now the app is actually in violation of COPPA. Uh-oh. What are the guys going to do about this? Oh, don't worry. Gavin Belson just bought Piper Chat. before this was discovered. It's fine.
Great.
Good.
So now the guys are out of Piper Chat. That doesn't exist. It's back to Huli. So they're all back with Richard talking about this decentralized internet. Richard, meanwhile, is talking to Monica, who I remember Monica was like, considered to be Peter Gregory a mentor. She was just like, hey, just so happened to be that Peter Gregory was also working on a decentralized internet. Guess who he was working on the decentralized internet with? Gavin Belson.
Hey!
Yeah. Also, just a reminder that this character is not Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel would never be working on a decentralized internet. Nothing that even remotely represent socialism. So, hilarious. Also, Big Head applies to go back to school at Stanford because he's, kind of aimless, whatever. And he's rejected. Instead, he's offered a guest lecturer spot due to his time as a tech innovator. Don't worry, he eventually gets a permanent seat as a professor at Stanford.
Commentary.
Wow. Yeah.
I want to show you guys. So a while back, I made a joke about a blood boy. It was the guy.
It was the Bobby Flay episode.
The Bobby Flay episode, and I realized that afterward that like you guys maybe didn't know what I was talking about, and I just wanted to show the image. So there's an episode where Richard visits Gavin, and Gavin is getting his regular blood boy treatment.
Incredible.
And that's where that joke is from.
And
so
the weird
6 years later or whatever.
And now it's mainstream news about the millionaire who is using his own son as a blood boy.
And this is based on news. I mean, this was happening. This was a thing that was happening. But yes, exactly.
I did not know Blood Boy as a reference to Silicon Valley. I knew Blood Boy as a reference to
insane billionaires.
Billionaires. Things that real life billionaires were actually doing. Yes,
exactly. So there's a fun little bit with like Richard and Gavin, who used to be at odds. Now they're like partnering together to rebuild the internet. It doesn't last very long, and because Gavin actually decides to leave for Tibet to go on a journey of self-discovery and to like live with monks or whatever. Fine.
Sure.
Meanwhile, as you do, Monica and Lori break off from Raviga and they start their own VC firm because, as Lori says, Monica is her best friend. Okay. So they start their own VC firm with Pied Piper as their first and pretty much only client, who of course changed direction again. So now Pied Piper is acting as a data storage app so that they can fund the new internet, essentially.
Good.
Richard finds his first customer in Dan Melcher, who happens to be the TechCrunch judge that punched Ehrlich for sleeping for two of his ex-wives. Unfortunately, this situation is complicated after Richard sleeps with Melcher's new fiancée.
Of course.
As is tradition.
Ehrlich leaves to join Gavin in Tibet to live with the monks. So toward the end of season 4, in a scheme to get more users, the guys attend HuliCon and they disguise their app as like a free conference download over the con Wi-Fi.
Oh, that's got U2's soundtrack on your iPod energy.
Well, and so unbeknownst to the guys, this leads to more than 50 phones suddenly exploding and bursting into flames in the conference, which is referencing the Samsung Galaxy thing.
I was just gonna say this is right when the Samsung 7 was blowing up. Literally.
A lot of ripped from the headlines jokes here, for sure.
Yeah.
So easy to do in a show like this.
Exactly. I mean, the whole thing is based on real life. So Gavin and Ehrlich find out about the exploding phones while with the monks in Tibet. So they both say, like, we got to head back to California. They stop at an opium den to like get cell service or whatever, and Ehrlich starts like smoking opium and passes out. So Gavin just leaves him there with like a bunch of money. They're in writing him off the show because TJ Miller got fired from the show.
What a great way to do that.
It's really good.
Absolutely.
Or because TJ Miller wanted out of the show,
left the show.
right?
He left the show. So it's such a funny joke because they don't kill him off. They just like, the joke is like Ehrlich never came back from Tibet, and they constantly are like, wherever Ehrlich is, like he's like referenced all the time.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
then the joke in the series finale is like Zhen Yang like basically like moved to Tibet, killed him, and took his identity, which is great. So end of season 4, Guilfoyle discovers that the shoddy homebrew servers cannot manage the amount of data that they've sold, and they need to upgrade to a real server solution. Pied Piper has no money, so Richard's solution is to just like take their entire infrastructure and hook it up to the Stanford's network, because Big Head works there now.
Yep.
And in an impressive attempt, they actually get everything, like all of these like server stacks loaded onto a truck and over to Stanford, just to realize that the back of the truck wasn't shut and all of Pied Piper now lies scattered across the 101.
What an incredible plot point.
Yeah.
Except, don't worry, it lives on. Pied Piper is not dead, guys, because earlier in the season, Guilfoyle, as a joke, hacked a bunch of smart fridges with Pied Piper. Like, so there was another bit about Jian Yang creating an app that literally tells you what food you're eating. And there was like a bit where he put it on the smart fridge, and then like Guilfoyle hacked the smart fridge as a joke.
Because
sure.
the smart your smart devices getting hacked was also a headline at this
thing.
time.
Yeah, exactly. So because Guilfoyle hacked one of the smart fridges talked with the other smart fridges and have all collectively built an all automated network collectively housing the shared data for Pied Piper.
God damn
Amazing.
Sure. Great.
Yeah. So
because it's an ongoing joke of the show, like Guilfoyle does something in his spare time and it turns out to be an amazing feat of tech. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they all do this, right? Like Dinesh creating the video chat that saved Pied Piper was so he could talk to a woman, right? Like Guilfoyle doing, right? Like they all do these things that like don't mean anything. Like they're all idiots in over their head, but they constantly fail up. So the last 2 seasons, and this is where like I haven't seen all of seasons 5 and 6. This is where I stopped watching. So I'm just gonna go through these very quick. But this is really like Pied Piper becoming a legit enterprise and like literally building their Pied Piper empire to make the world a better place through AI-supported decentralization.
Those are just words.
Yeah.
That means absolutely nothing.
I wrote that. So season 5 starts with Richard acquiring a rival app called Sliceline that literally just resells Domino's pizza for $1 less.
Awesome.
Yeah. Part of this is, there's a bit where the Richard and the guys bring on like a game developer to be part of their empire, right? Like they're building a platform. They're building a platform to rival like Google.
Yeah.
Laurie and Monica continue to be Pied Piper's like singular investor, primary revenue source. But then Monica finds out that Laurie plans on using Richard's like decentralized internet for ad revenue, which for somebody trying to build a decentralized internet is shitty. So she leaves, and Guilfoyle suggests that Pied Piper launch a, wait for it, cryptocurrency.
God damn it.
God damn it.
Which they do, and they call it Piper Coin.
Okay, that could have been worse.
It could have been worse. So opening this allows the guys to leave from under Laurie's thumb, and then Monica heads over to Pied Piper to be their CFO. Meanwhile, Gavin Belson, there's a bunch of bits about like Gavin Belson and the Hooli like working with the Chinese factories. At some point, Jack Barker visits a Chinese factory and is like held up at gunpoint. Gavin Belson moves a major manufacturing plant to North Carolina to speed up the development of his 3rd attempt at a box. He demands the town cut essential services to fund manufacturing, and as a result, the factory burns down.
Amazing.
While this is happening, PiperNet is up to a record number of users, and between that and the Piper Coin, the crew moves into a fancy new 4-floor office building. And Richard quickly becomes the tech mogul that he once despised, as the game that he bought earlier is revealed to be stealing users' data.
Great.
Perfect.
With Hooli, the tables are turned as they are downsized and are mostly acquired by Amazon. And so Pied Piper acquires what is left of Hooli, while Gavin Belson leaves Hooli to become a tech ethics think tank. He calls it Tethics. He calls it Tethics.
Is it actually Amazon, or is it legally distinct from Amazon?
It's just Amazon. Because one of the things this show does, like, again, this show exists in our world, like, save for Hooli and Pied Piper, like, it's all real real companies. Well, Sliceline doesn't exist, but you get the point.
Of course, Amazon, like all these actual tech companies want to be in this
fucking
show.
Love it, yeah.
Because there's no such thing as bad press when you can print your own monopoly money. Like,
absolutely.
Like Bill Gates literally shows up in the series finale.
Yeah.
You know, like
perfect.
Bill Gates, like famously a fan of this show, right? Like it's, you know. So the last couple of episodes of season 6 are really just like Pied Piper going full Breaking Bad. You know, they've like really just Richard is the new Gavin Belson. He's a tech mogul. He is just doing whatever he can to grow the empire. They conspire with Russ Hanneman once again to in order to get out of some ethical investigations. They help organize his music festival, Russ Fest. And this is just the image of a gigantic holographic Russ Hanneman out in the middle of the desert.
Sure.
So there's a scene with like, it shows like a guy flying in a plane and you can see Russ Hanneman from on the ground, like up from the plane. It's really funny.
When did this episode air in relation to Firefest?
This was 2019.
Yeah.
So post Firefest.
Right around there.
Yeah. It's probably close to it. Part of this, like, again, this like Breaking Bad is Guilfoyle creates an AI program that's good, like to maximize efficiency so that they can juice their users. And Richard incorporates that into PiperNet, which is now like this whole platform. The AI program works so flawlessly that it attracts the attention of very real company AT&T, who purchase exclusive rights to launch PiperNet as their new device platform. So they're basically launching like an alternative to Android.
Okay.
Okay.
So the series, so like this is the lead up to the series finale. So like Pied Piper has made it. You know, they're launching. They're like the biggest new platform. Like Richard and the guys have made it, and this whole series finale leads up to or showcases the lead up to this launch in the form of a documentary that's being shown 10 years later. So this is both like 10 years later and then current day. So the current day storyline is they realize that the AI program is so efficient because it basically learned how to break through encryption protocols, which like if you don't know what that means, basically bypasses any level of security. So like this is a platform, which means that like personal information, telephone numbers, addresses, but also like nuclear launch codes, intel, right? Like all this stuff's being shared over a network. Anybody can see it. And Guilfoyle, like upon realizes this, like hacks Dinesh's Tesla and like has it drive off because he's like, I can just do that because there's no such thing as encryption anymore. And everyone's just like, fuck. So in one more let Blaine die kind of situation, the Pied Piper team has to decide, make millions of dollars or save the world from an AI apocalypse.
From themselves.
From themselves. So they decide to destroy Pied Piper. But they have to do that in a way that will seem like an accident so they don't go to jail. So Guilfoyle updates the code to emit like a sound wave, kind of like an EMP, you know, where it's like it'll disrupt any of the devices using it. Instead, what it does is it emits a sound at a frequency that cannot be heard by human ears, but happens to attract rats from all over San Francisco to flood the streets.
Good.
Because, may I remind you, the company's name is Pied Piper.
Yeah.
And the story of the Pied Piper is a man that plays music to attract rats away from a town.
Okay. That's pretty good.
That's pretty
really good.
It's really good. So this is the apocalyptic event that is effectively the beginning and the end of Pied Piper. Thereby destroying the company forever. So the documentary then shows like the 10 years later. So where we get the where are they now is Dinesh and Guilfoyle start their own network security company. Their desks, they share a desk. It's very cute. Jared is volunteering at nursing homes because he's a sweet kid. Big Head becomes president of Stanford.
I love that.
That's really good.
There's a bit where he's like, yeah, I work at, so I'm president of Stanford. Like the cameraman's correcting him.
Yeah.
He goes, the documentary is like following them. They go back to the house and they're like hey, I used to live here, and it's like the people that live there are like, I don't give a shit. But there's like a teen girl or there's like a college age girl who's like, she's like pitching them an app, right? And she goes like, oh my god, like President Bighetti, like, why are you here? And he's like, oh, hey, how do you know who I am? She's like, I go to Stanford. And he's like, oh yeah, me too. It's really funny. So Monica absolutely definitely doesn't start working for the NSA. Gavin becomes an adult erotica author, which is fun. And and then Richard becomes a professor at Stanford teaching tech ethics.
Tethics.
Mm-hmm. And that's Silicon Valley. That's it. We did it.
Amazing. Just
Yeah.
very good.
It's fun.
Andrew, question. Do you know how the quality of the show held up over 6 seasons?
Yeah, great question. I do think it holds up pretty well. It doesn't super drop off. I think the last couple seasons, like again, I didn't finish season 5. Season 5 definitely.
TJ Miller fan.
Because I'm such a TJ Miller fan.
Yeah.
Season 5 definitely gets like a lot sillier. Like again, it's like Pied Piper becomes an empire, and you're like, okay. I think it definitely is like a lot sillier and a little bit more cartoonish. I genuinely believe, like, I do think this is a really good show. I genuinely believe you can watch like the first 2 seasons and be like, yeah, get it.
Yeah, sure.
You know, like you can get it. Maybe season 3 if you really like Stephen Tobolowsky.
At some point, the viewership, I'm sure, tipped from like your standard HBO viewer to only tech nerds. So it had to
exactly.
I mean, play to them.
It's not for everybody, right? Like, I think you're going to get a lot more out of this if you've worked in tech, if you've lived in the Bay Area, or if you've lived in in like an Austin or a Boston, or one of those Austins.
An Austin or a Boston.
Yeah, city like that, right? I think you'll get a little bit more out of it in there. Again, if you like Office Space, this is also probably up your alley. But yeah, no, I mean it's a really good show. It's a solid show. It's still pretty good rating, and I think it generally holds up.
Okay.
A lot of dude humor is the thing. Right? Like, not a lot of women, not a lot. There's a little bit of people of color, but like it's mostly dude humor.
It's a Mike Judge show.
It's a Mike Judge show. I mean,
right.
And like my partner loves it. She likes it just as much as I do. So, it's not like a Rick and Morty in that sense. But final thoughts.
Yeah, man, good breakdown. This is as much of Silicon Valley as I ever needed, and this is probably as much as I'll ever consume.
Fair.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's definitely a show that I get, and I am sure that I would laugh at a lot, and I also don't feel like I really need to watch.
I think that's fair.
That's kind of my thoughts.
I was going to say just very similar. I will probably look on YouTube for like the best of
for the fight
Silicon
scenes.
Valley for the fight scenes,
watch the fight scenes.
For the Avatar Korra fight scenes, just to see like the best bits. But same, seems fun.
Yeah,
probably won't watch it, but it seems fun.
Better than Emery Wars.
Well, listen, we don't have time to get into that.
Todd still has to read those, so he can't give you an actual opinion.
That's true.
Sorry, I can't read. My eyes are broken.
I'm blind.
Yeah.
This Silicon Valley's been on my like actual short list of shows to watch forever. This definitely ticked it up a few spaces. And it was already close to one of my next viewings anyway. So I'll probably watch a couple seasons here soon. And
if this is for anyone of the 3 of you, it's probably Kyle. This is also the most like 30 Rock-esque. So it's that kind of just like real quick, snappy, joke.
Everything I've seen, it's a joke a minute type. Setup too. So I've been all in and just haven't started it, and I'm more so now. So
if you like tech, watch Silicon Valley. If you think you would like this but don't like tech, watch Veep. That is my recommendation.
That's a good suggestion.
Veep is the other, like it's been Veep or Silicon Valley forever.
They are two sides of the same pseudo improv coin.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's it. Thanks, everyone, and thanks for listening to Debate This. As always, you can follow along with our arguments on any fucking social media or also at Debate. Fuck it. You can follow along with the arguments on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, the other bullshit at Debate This Cast, or on our website at debatethiscast.com. And if you want to commission your own flavor text, you can head over to patreon.com/debatethiscast. A one-time payment of $60 will allow you to dictate whatever thing we talk about next. Until next time, I'm Andrew Henderson.
I'm Kyle, HBO Go to the polls, Harper.
Good. I'm Matt, Workaholics is just Silicon Valley for stoners, Cole.
And I'm Todd. We made it 2 weeks before our first Tim Allen reference, Thomas.
We're saying thanks for debating with us. If you think we're wrong, you can come fight us behind the swing sets nerds.
Ship Adventure. The closing track is On Our Way off of the album Dunes at Night.